And thank you very much for joining us. I am Iyori Folani. Okay, well, yesterday, President Tinubu announced quite a number of, he signed some executive orders affecting the taxation policy and the business community generally. So we'll talk about that. And my guest this morning is Mr. Dumebi Kachiku, the African Democratic Congress candidate in the 2023 presidential election. Good morning to you, Mr. Kachiku.
Good morning. Thanks for having me again.
Again, always our pleasure. Okay, as I sort of indicated, we're going to be looking at, fixing the economy, what Tinubu must do. And yesterday, you know, through his special advisor, you know, he was speaking, Dele Alake. He has given a number of executive orders, has been explained to us, been hearing that business communities are giving the nod that, aha, it looks as if people are going to, at least this administration understands the lie of the ground and is moving to, you know, unburden businesses, take some of the burdens that businesses have been borne. Talking here specifically about multiple taxations. But as Tinubu's reforms have been well received, both internationally, not to mention locally here, I imagine that these things, as I was saying just before we went on air, there's something of an accountancy principle to it. Whatever happens on the debit side must affect what the credit side is looking like and the other way around. Give me your impressions, if you will, on Tinubu and his efforts at tackling our almost comatose economy so far.
Okay, great. We must look at the economy from the point of view of where we are coming from, the impacts the last administration, their actions and inactions had on the economy, where we say the economy totally collapsed. We are looking at what our current president is doing. If you take the reaction of the organized private sector, a lot of them are saying that he is doing well so far, but he needs to do a lot more. The market is reacting positively. But the challenge, or what most people don't see, is that when you take certain actions that support positively the organized private sector, what we fail to realize is that Nigeria is underpinned largely by the informal sector. So as the president issues executive orders that help the organized private sector, he must also start critically looking at the informal sector. How do you help the young men and women who are doing business today, who are impacted by our economy, by the Naira redesign policy, and by the subsidy removal? What kind of executive orders are you going to put in place to support them? I saw some of the orders yesterday on how tax suspension and reduction. More has got to be done in that area because, like I always say to people, the first point of inflation in the economy is at the ports. And what the last government did to shore up their revenue base, seeing that they were failing in all areas, was to tax, increase taxation. Considering that they were not putting anything back in, the economy was still failing. So people who are already struggling, you can't overtax them. But what this president must now do is that the savings he's made in subsidy removal, what I have advised should be a temporary removal, he should put that savings back into the people, investing in the people. So number one, Nigerian people are the most industrious, the most creative people on planet Earth. How do you unleash their creative potential so that they impact on the global economy? They are able to emerge on the world stage. You must start investing in these people, training, retutoring, retooling. I have long said that we have to look at low skill sets, take our colleges of education, take our teacher training colleges, take our polytechnics, and start training people in skill sets relevant to the economy of today, so that we can unleash that potential in Africa and the greater world. so our people can go out there, just like what the Indians and Chinese are doing all over the world. We ought to get our people out there. Right now, we're exporting high-paying skill sets to the rest of the world. And when we are doing that, just like what we see with our doctors and nurses living in Nigeria, it impacts our economy. We need our middle-class base to stay in Nigeria. We should export the lower skill sets because those people go out there and send dollars that our economy needs. We also have to start unlocking potentials in other sectors, like the blue economy. If you see what Vietnam, Samoa, Kenya, what all these people are doing in the blue economy now, look at our ocean line. We are absolutely doing nothing. Those people who reside in those areas are just there breaking pipelines. They are in a degraded environment. We must unleash the potential there so that we can start exporting and creating good paying jobs there. If we look at agriculture, I've also said that whoever this president brings as the Minister of Agriculture is key to his success in this administration. Were he to focus on oil and gas and neglect agriculture, solid minerals, he will fail like other presidents. We can no longer pay lip service to agriculture and solid minerals. We need to take sustainable actions in those sectors. I have said, solid minerals, we have the Chinese, the Indians coming to take our raw materials out of Nigeria. We need to start issuing executive orders that says, anybody who wants those solid minerals, you can come in here, but you must process those solid minerals in Nigeria and then export the finished products. So that way, you are creating good paying jobs in Nigeria. As again, just taking solid minerals and who benefits? The local chiefs and what have you. Again, we now look at the digital economy. The last administration issued a lot of white papers and said a lot about the digital economy. But again, I refer to India, what India has done, what they are doing in America, even Vietnam again, China. The digital economy is what you use to unleash the potential of our youths today. We are speaking about double-digit unemployment rate, and we have people who are largely schooled, who right now, their digital economy is Yahoo and defrauding people. But can you imagine if you retool those people to start selling services to the larger world? Imagine if our architects who are redundant, who don't have jobs today, if they're selling architectural services just with their internet to the rest of the world. What of engineering design? There's nothing you cannot sell through the internet, but we must retool our people. We must make broadband affordable. Broadband should no longer be an asset that only the rich can afford. Broadband is a right, a fundamental right, just like water and light. Today, we must start growing that infrastructure across Nigeria. If you look at the trunk of what the telecom services have done, they focus on the commercial areas where they are getting good revenues. But what happens is that you now have people, our middle class, leaving the rural areas and all migrating to Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt. What do you think happens to places like Asaba, Pokistum, Zaria? What happens? If the middle class leave those areas, those cities die. So we must start, the president must work with the governors to see how they can start creating new urban economies, new urban environments, master planning new cities that ensures that people no longer see the need to come to Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, but people can reside in Asaba, in Benin, in any of the smaller cities, because whatever they get in Abuja, they will have in those cities. You need to create an enabling environment for our president to succeed. I have said this time and time again. His team, the people he chooses to work with, will determine his success. We'll see it in the next 3 months. Right now, he's on a honeymoon period, and where we can excuse a lot of things. He's doing better than the last president because he's working in a very measured manner. Or, like I've said, he's actually sprinting. In the next 3 months, we'll now know if the sprint is heading in the right direction. And it is his team, the kind of people he has assembled around him, that will, by and large, determine that.
At the very top, I just wanted to clear this before my next question. You spoke in relation to the fuel subsidy removal. You spoke of temporary removal of fuel subsidy. I didn't understand that. Maybe I could just clear that up before going further.
Okay, let's take Venezuela as an example right now. We saw what happened when they removed fuel subsidy. We see their economy today in tatters. Fuel, carbon is a God-given resource to Nigerians. There's no reason why Nigerians should be paying the same price others are paying all over the world for that resource, just because the government has not been able to manage the process of fuel subsidy. It's not the fault of Nigerians. It's the fault of government that has not been able to police or put in place a good structure that ensures that the process is there, takes the subsidy to the people who need the subsidy. So President Tinubu had no choice. He was forced back into the corner to take out subsidy because the former president didn't even provide for subsidy in the budget. Now, having done that, what didn't happen was that there was no palliative structure. Now, you're taking a decision and retroactively or after taking a decision, you are now thinking about your palliative structure. Pillars that we are getting is that a lot of people seem to believe that you need to do cash transfers to people, which what we saw when the last administration did that, people abused that system and to be abused again. What will I do if I were the president of Nigeria today? I'll look at my NNPC filling stations and for example, where we have inflation is cost of transportation today. I will ensure that NNPC is selling fuel to transporters, registered transporters, be it Uber registered, be it our long-haul transporters who are registered, and they're selling to those people still at the subsidized rate because the subsidy fraud was not with NNPC, it was with other marketers. So NNPC can continue selling to transporters so that we ensure that the civil servants, those at the lower rung of the ladder who don't have vehicles, don't suffer the high cost of transport that we are seeing today. I will also ensure that that subsidy that is removed, we must say, what did we take $800 million, $1 billion, what did we use it to do today? Did we invest in new infrastructure? Did we invest in training 10 million Nigerians, 1 million Nigerians? Did we invest in new hospitals? Did we invest in schools? What did we use that money to do? Nobody should hear like what President Buhari did, that they took money and they said that they were giving money to people, only they are the only ones who know those people. That must not be done by this government. We must see where that saving has gone into so that all Nigerians can benefit. Is it our security architecture? There are areas where we are underserved in Nigeria where we can take the savings into so that Nigerians, when they are feeling this pinch, when they are making sacrifice, when they see tomorrow what they got out of this, they nod in appreciation and say, okay, we are better off for it. So that's what I mean that. So, and also back to your question about this, about being it temporary. For the next 3-4 months, I expect that this president should put in place a foolproof subsidy scheme that ensures that subsidy gets to the people, that people don't abuse this, that our marketers don't take these products out of Nigeria to sell for higher margins. If they put in place a better scheme, they can then reintroduce subsidy. Remember, we were suffering because we had almost 40 million liters unaccounted for. We were subsidizing other nations. Once the president is able to plug those loopholes, you can reintroduce subsidy and Nigerians will be grateful, will smile because it's a gift that God gave to Nigerians.
Okay. Now, your answer has prompted another question that I hadn't thought about, but since you went there, when you were speaking about the example, the possibility, for instance, of NNPC filling stations, you know, and all you said about that, I wonder what your thoughts are. Would that include, would it include things like CNG and LPG, for example, or no, we're just talking about the liquid fuels that we know, the diesel and the petrol?
The reality is that a lot of people have been speaking in recent times about CNG, LPG, and what have you. Our problem is not a problem of the alternatives, it's a problem of the system. So whatever alternatives we bring in place will still suffer the same effects in Nigeria. You want to bring in CNG and LPG, it means that someone has got to bear the cost of the skids and the kits in all the vehicles in Nigeria. It's a huge cost. Why can't our refineries work? If you look at what's happened in the last 16 years, and all the money that they put in refineries for refineries that were not working. If you have a president that says, investigate this, arrest and prosecute these people, I'm telling you, the problem we have in Nigeria is that nothing happens to people when they abuse a system. And that's why the system continues to be abused. If you see China and other countries where people are assiduously, diligently prosecuted, people don't commit the kind of crimes we commit here. Our crimes smack of so much impunity that we marvel, the world marvels. How can somebody commit such a crime on such a large scale and nothing happens to the person? But if we can diligently prosecute these people, how can you speak of subsidy fraud in the trillions of naira? Trillions of naira. Nigerians, over 150-80 million Nigerians are suffering today because a few people who are less than 1,000 people committed fraud. We are all suffering. And then we say, let's look the other way. Let's ignore these people and let's start saying remove subsidy. And then, why should we do that? Who are these people? We know them. The system knows them. NNPC knows these people. You ignore them and while we're all suffering? No. This president must do something about this so that they don't come in another sector to undermine Nigerians, undermine our economy. Economic fraud to that extent is treasonable. So we must do something about this.
Okay, I brought that question up about the gases, LNG and the CNG and LPG, simply because I think I read somewhere that the president has sort of endorsed an initiative that is going to result in 5 billion naira being invested in LPG. And as you know, that is LPG, by the way. Sorry for using that technically, that technical thing for some of our viewers. It's cooking gas, but it's not just for cooking. You can use it for to power vehicles instead of fuel. Same thing with CNG. It's a different kind of gas. So that's the only reason I brought that up, and I've taken your perspective on that. But the president seems to have at least endorsed some people that are working in that direction. This is without prejudice to the take that you have given us. Now, moving forward, the other thing that, and it's sort of obvious in your answers so far, your responses so far, we're going to have to boost Nigeria's productivity, or shall we say, production capacity. And we're not alone here. I hear that African countries generally, have this challenge before them. We're one of them. In fact, we're looked up to as the leader in Africa. Your thoughts on boosting the productive capacity of Nigeria?
Okay, well, I think having a president who is a businessman helps us because he knows where it pinches him. He understands that in a global economy, we're competing for serious investors. Right now, we have a situation where our legacy investors are leaving Nigeria in droves. The president has got to work night and day to ensure that he stems the tide, that these people stay and continue to invest in Nigeria. In order for them to stay here, we need to examine their issues. Take, for example, in the last administration, what happened with Ajib Zabazaba, and where President Buhari, even though he knew that they were going to bring almost a $28 billion investment into Nigeria, he didn't care. He said there's a court case, a criminal case in Italy, get it done and blah, blah, blah. But the investment could have continued while you are dealing with the court cases. He didn't care. Now, what we hear, rumors that Ajib might be on their way out of Nigeria. You need their investment in a time like this. Other countries are looking for these people. You are chasing them out. So this president must ensure that all the IOCs who are trying to leave Nigeria, that he cushions their concerns and ensures that these people stay in Nigeria. The people who are already in Nigeria are the people who are your marketers. They are the people who are going to tell potential investors that Nigeria is an investment haven, a good investment haven, that you can come and invest in Nigeria. But if they have bad experiences, why will people come and invest in Nigeria? So we need to make our country investment friendly. We need to remove all the bottlenecks. The former vice president was working on a scheme to ensure that the regulatory issues were removed. But How far did they go? They didn't go very far with that. This president must continue where they stop and ensure that it's easy for people to come to Nigeria, register a company, expatriate their profits. We must ensure that they come to Nigeria, they don't have community issues. If we look at the means of our economy, which is oil and gas today, you understand that in the onshore areas, all the IOCs are trying to exit. Why? Because they're having community issues. You have people breaking pipes, kidnapping people, killing people there, and what have you. The security agencies must be alive to their responsibility. The failure of the previous administration and their complicity, just like what the GMD has said in the past, and what people like Asari Dokubo and Tompolo have said, must be stopped. We must ensure that we get rid of insecurity in the country so that people feel that this place is safe for them to invest. If your Nigerian middle class are leaving your country in droves, are you expecting to attract other people to come when your people, your citizens are leaving? Absolutely not. So we must ensure that Nigeria is a safer place. We must ensure that key services, infrastructure works in Nigeria, light, water view. If we have a situation where people who have trained for 6 to 8 years become doctors and you're not paying them well, they don't have light, they don't have water, they don't have affordable housing, why would they stay in Nigeria? So we must address those issues. And I keep on coming back to this point. The president is not a magician. He's one man. He's one brain. The president needs an effective team, a smart team, a talented team, and he needs the buy-in of all Nigerians. Right now, what Nigerians feel is the pain and pinch of this economy. For them to continue to support you, they must see very quickly what your plans are to make the economy better. And I've given different ideas and suggestions on what the president can do with our creative talent, our youth, with our low-skilled workforce in training, retooling them, and exporting them. I always say this. I watch people from Cotonou, from Ghana, from Togo who come into Nigeria, and we bring them here. We pay them more because we say they are better carpenters, they are better electricians, they are better artisans in every area. Why? Their countries strategically invested in training them, certifying them, and pushing them out. Those countries now depend on the forex that these people are bringing to their countries. We have a huge population. We have an untapped potential in that area. Let's use our polytechnics, our colleges of education. Let's train these people, certified courses, 3 months, 6 months, train them properly and push them into Africa and let them start working for us out there. Let them start working for us here in Nigeria also. There are so many areas we can do well, but everything depends on the team the president puts in place to work with him and how patient Nigerians can be to ensure that they see his ideas and they see his ideas materialize. But by and large, I think this president has the right idea, but he's only one person. Let us see his cabinet very soon, and let us see how they come together to tackle the problems we are facing as a people.
All right, let me bring in Mr. George, who has been waiting onto the program. Good morning, Mr. George, calling in from Ikeja.
Yes,
in Lagos.
Good morning, Uncle Yori, and good morning to your guest.
Yes.
Uncle Yori, I quite agree with what your guest is saying.
Mr. Kachiku.
Because he said that those who are surrounding the president will determine how he is able to execute his policies and programs. Many of the things he's saying are already encompassed in the manifestos of the president. They are there. And he is applying some of them already. So when his cabinet is fully in place, I think that is when this subject should be tabled, so that we know who and who to be addressing in different sectors. From the ones he has appointed so far, I think some of them are making impact. For example, he has appointed a special advisor on taxation and revenue. And within a week or two, we are seeing policy in that direction. That's what I expect from the security forces as well. The enabling environment must be provided for investors to feel safe to invest in our country. So security is key, like the speaker said. Yesterday, I saw the soldiers, the military, displaying their wares on television. That's not what I want to see. You have this equipment. Go and use it to deal with the criminals who are not allowing people to travel from one place to the other. There are kidnappings here and there. Use the equipment and your know-how to deal with them.
Okay.
You don't need to show me those equipment.
All right, Mr. George. I beg your pardon, but thank you very much for calling in, Mr. George. So, Mr. Kachuku, he quite a number of subheadings there, but did you want to respond to anything or react, as it were?
Yes. Yes, so let me react quickly. Yes, like I said, the executive orders are well-intended, but they don't go far enough as much as I expected, right? He also spoke on security. The president has appointed an NSA in the person of Nuhu Ribadu, who Nigerians feel comfortable that, going by his antecedents, that security will be addressed frontally now. We are waiting to see what will happen, because we saw the discordant tunes from the former NSA and the service chiefs, but I believe that the president has gotten this right. We just have to wait and see what they will do. Security is key, but security goes in tandem with the economy. If security is failing, the economy is failing. If the economy is failing, security is failing. But also, every other sector that is failing, they are all tied. They are all part of an ecosystem, just like the human body. Every system, every organ is important. So again, it all boils down to the team this president will put in place. Let me sound this warning loud and clear. My dear president, you must not make the mistake of making political appointments at a time when the nation is bleeding. You must get competent, capable people, talented people, people with a worldview, people with an understanding of the issues, people who can speak and address these issues in their sleep. We don't want expired politicians to man critical sectors who cannot even begin to write a memo or read a memo or interpret a memo. We need people who are smart. That is the only way you, Mr. President, will succeed. What you did in Lagos with the kind of team you assembled is what you must do in Abuja with your cabinet and the heads of all the agencies. A first-class team, a team that is correct.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but yes, thank you very much. And Ola Balogun has called in from the UK. Good morning to you, Mr. Balogun.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you very much for calling in.
I'm Uncle Yori. Yeah, Uncle Yori, what I say, the first part of what I heard from your guest is that they should go to NNPC, fueling for commercial and it. Sir, with due respect, that cannot work in Nigeria, which we all know. You give fuel and they will go and sell it. And they don't even bother to carry the passenger. Anyway, that aside, what I think we should do, sir, is so simple. It's area of transportation. The state and the local government, they should take this responsibility. Even in Abuja, there's no good transportation in Abuja. You agree with me? Let the government float the place with public transport. And public transport brings all these things down. Students should not pay. Not for the parent. An elderly one, once you are 60 years, you don't pay transport. These are good areas where government can come in with this palliative. But sharing money, we go back to what they've done before. But giving fuel, I don't agree with it. Just like in London here, nobody gives you fuel. But we have full transportation everywhere. And the children don't pay when they're going to school. Throughout flow, they don't pay. Yeah. That's what I think on my own side that should work for us now. Federal will not do it. It has to go all very soon they will come to Abuja to come and collect money.
Okay.
Put this money in transportation. Let there be transportation everywhere. And you find out that everybody will say, oh, government have done their own. In terms of goods, we have the train now. Some states have some train. Then we need to now help those ones, like the trailers. I agree on that because they transport food from one point to another point. So that this thing will get to where we expect to get to.
All right, then. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Balogun, for calling in and those points. Mr. Kachiku, please, if you could just try and remember some of those points. I'll take a break. And so when I come back, you'll then sort of react to those ideas. Stay with us, please. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. And we're looking at fixing the economy, what President Tinubu must do. Our guest is Dumebi Kachuku, the African Democratic Congress candidate in the 2023 presidential election. Thank you indeed, once again for being on the program. The gentleman who called in from the UK, Mr. Balogun, putting out some ideas there. He probably grew up in Nigeria as well. And I remember when we were kids, there was the part of the attitude he was talking about in school buses. In fact, I think people in Lagos or in the West will remember the term Scully. Scully was a school bus for school children. But what do you think of some of those ideas that he sort of put next to some of the things you had said?
Okay, I think by and large, he and I were saying the same thing, but he didn't quite understand what I meant about using NMPs to sell fuel to registered or structured transporters. So the kind of transport scheme he was referring to are the kind of transporters I was also referring to, that you should get this fuel to them at a subsidized price. Now, in Nigeria, we make this mistake of always saying it won't, because of the fraud and corruption in Nigeria, that will never work. That means we just accept that as a people we have failed, that nothing will ever work, that we're corrupt people. Where does this start getting better? Where do we draw the line and say, moving forward, we must have put in place a foolproof system that ensures that corruption or abuses in the system are no longer there? We must not always plan and say, because we're a corrupt people, that plans that or schemes that work in other parts of the world will not work in Nigeria, and so our people should suffer. No, we must utilize those same schemes, those same ideas, those same strategies, but make them foolproof to the fraud and to the inherent weaknesses in our people as a whole. So if you give registered transporters fuel through NNPC pump stations, you must ensure it's a foolproof system that does not allow them sell that fuel. That's why I said they must be registered, and you come up with a foolproof system. Again, what he might not understand is that a lot of the state governments have privatized their state-owned transport companies. They were not running them efficiently, which again is a problem. Now, those they privatize these things to, how well are they running the schemes or the transport companies, or were they just given to cronies? We must revisit those schemes, because that is where Nigerians can get the benefit of subsidy, savings, and what have you. It does not make sense that in the year 2023, we don't have good mass transit systems in place. When President Jonathan tried to remove subsidy, he flooded the country with mass transit buses before he attempted to remove subsidy. Where are those buses today? What happened to those buses? Did they sell them? Have they been used? Are they comatose? What happened to those buses? Are they going to bring in buses? Now, what is their plan? You need to bring a mix of ideas, system strategies to cushion the effects of subsidy removal, which is why I keep on advocating that the removal should be temporary. It's easier for you to put in place a foolproof subsidy system than for you to start bringing in ideas that cost you trillions of naira. It's easier to come up with a better system. That's what I will say. Then there's something I forgot to mention earlier when I was speaking about ideas. Yes. President Asiwaju, as governor of Lagos State, and subsequent governors of Lagos State failed in harnessing the tourism potential of Lagos and also in growing the blue economy of Lagos State, seen as a nation surrounded by the ocean. But that does not mean that he must fail to address that today. tourism is the mainstay of a lot of nations in the world today.
Okay, I beg your pardon. Let me bring in Austin in Enugu, who also has been waiting for a while. Good morning to you, Austin, and thank you for holding on.
Good morning for having me. Thank you. Thank you for bringing me on. In fixing the economy, I think one of the things the President Tinubu should do is, first of all, is to bring down the cost of food. I didn't say the cost of living. I mean the cost of food, because they say that a hungry man is an angry man. Most of the agitations, anxieties we see in the country today is because Nigerians are hungry. We are hungry not just because of, we are not just hungry because of a lack of good governance. No, we are hungry because of food. When I say food, I mean food. If you look at the cost of food in the market today, and how it's affecting the crisis in the economy. Many people may not look at that. Just look at what is happening in the northeast Boko Haram, driving people away, people in their villages who are cultivating these crops, driving them away from their villages. Now, who is producing the food? Nobody. Most of those people that have been driven away from their villages are now in the city, hunting for jobs that are nowhere.
Okay.
So when you bring down the cost of food and people can feed and be happy, then most of the agitations we are seeing here and there will begin to come down. And secondly, the rule of law has to apply. Nigeria today is in a very high state of lawlessness. Anything goes. Anybody does everything and gets away with it. So nobody does anything. There's no justice system. So nothing is working. Nothing seems to be working. So when the rule of law applies, if you know you commit this crime, this is what this is what is going to face you, and you're going for it. When you're hungry, you eat food, and at least, even if you don't have a job, at least when you eat, your anxiety and the agitations will reduce. When we do these two things, just these two things, then we begin to talk about power, we begin to talk about the naira, and all of this will begin to.
Okay, Austin.
When we are hungry.
I'm so sorry, Austin. Thank you very much. You know, like committed Nigerians, there's so many things on your list there. Thank you for sharing those ones, especially when you talked about food, because it helps me. It leads me on to what I was going to ask Mr. Kachukwu about, and he spoke about it earlier, and I wanted to ask him to go back there for a moment so we could spend a bit more time on it. I'm talking about agriculture. Of course, agriculture is more than food. There are other agricultural products, but agriculture should be the mainstay. So, Mr. Kachukwu, how would you, what would be your reaction to, the suggestions of Austin? Because I wanted to go back into agriculture, which Tinubu has always been a quote unquote a fan of right through the decades. I remember this very keenly from his colloquiums back in the day.
Yeah, sure. Earlier on I spoke about the president looking critically at solid minerals and agriculture, and that the people he appoints into those ministries will speak a lot about what he tends to achieve, right? And again, you said that the president has spoken a lot about agriculture, considering that in his campaign he spoke about Agbado, if you remember the campaigns. But yes, the president understands this. Those who are privy to his manifesto and what they plan to do in agriculture, they have a sound basic idea of what needs to be done. It's again about the people who man that sector. If I were president of Nigeria today, what will I do? The world today speaks about agripreneurship and agribusiness. In Nigeria, all our plans speak to subsistence farming, how to make farmers comfortable, how to make farmers this, how to make farmers that. Farming is business all over the world. Farmers are some of the most richest people all over the world. To be a farmer in other parts of the world, it speaks about middle class or upper middle class, or that you are in the top 1%. In Nigeria, our farmers are some of the poorest people because government has not begun to understand what agriculture is about or how to unleash the potential in agriculture. Let's look at the plans of government from the last 3 decades in agriculture. Government plans from a top to bottom approach. That's the federal government comes up with policies and dovetails into what state and local governments will do. You cannot plan agriculture that way. Agriculture has to come from bottom to the top, from the local governments right all the way to federal government. The federal government overlays what the local governments have come up with because they understand the climatic or the agricultural conditions and patterns in their different local governments. I am in Asokoro in your studios right now. I dare say that what you have available or the climatic conditions in Asokoro are very different from what you have in Wuse 2 or in Maitama. But when the federal government plans, because they look at it in areas of states and what have you, or regions, they are not able to address, to drill down into the kind of planning required, but only the local governments can do this. Several years ago, I came up with what I called CLAP, Comprehensive Local Agriculture Plan. Essentially, what we were doing was planning agriculture from local government level, so that you know that in Abaji, this is what you can produce, what you have comparative advantage in producing. If you have a comparative advantage in producing this, and the guy in Maitama doesn't have a comparative advantage, but both of you are able to produce cassava, the guy in Maitama doesn't necessarily have to produce cassava, because the guy in Abaji can do that. Secondly, I looked at what I call a fork-to-farm model. From your fork to the farm, or from the farm to the fork. Come up with a vertical plan that looks at all the different ecosystems, bring them into one, and ensure that they work. In Nigeria today, the guy in my village on Chubo is farming. He produces cassava or tomatoes. And because he does not have any storage facilities, he is forced to sell quickly at a very low price so that it does not waste. Same thing applies to all the farmers across Nigeria. We need to start planning storage and processing in senatorial districts. You need to start having agro-processing parks in all the senatorial districts of Nigeria. Okay. And ensure that those agro-processing parks support all the farmers in those districts, so that whatever you produce, you have guaranteed off-takers in those agro-processing parks. You are supplying them with raw materials. That improves the lots of farmers immediately. That also ensures that our people in rural areas, our youth, people who graduate, are not rushing to Lagos because they have good paying jobs in those agro-processing parks.
Okay. It's interesting you spoke about tomatoes there, because women, who, go to the market regularly, they're actually crying these days about tomato. And when you spoke about spoilage and the need to get storage facilities and all of that, it sort of resonated, because they say tomato has become gold. Now people are actually resorting to tomato pastes to sort of augment the tomato taste there. And to women, this is a very big deal. But Mr. Ibrahim, good morning to you, and thank you very much for holding on, sir. Now go ahead. Mr. Ibrahim, are you still with us? I might have left it too late, but I was looking. I couldn't just interrupt our guest because we needed to understand the points that he was making. Now, so talking about agriculture, it has to be big. You were saying that around in other places of the world, they are the top echelons of society, from the middle class. I don't know, how is that going? I remember back in the day in Kwara State, they made some efforts to sort of import people who had been used to farming on such a large scale. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that, because if it's not big, we're not going to get to that very place. But even where farming is big, we hear that government, take the US for example, often has to come in to subsidize their agriculture. Could you explain that in between there?
Good. So where do you start from is by ensuring that you have the right skill sets in that sector. What will I do if I were president? I will ensure that I will go to all our colleges of agriculture or our universities of agriculture. I will make sure that every student in these institutions, they go to school free. We want to harness the potential in that sector. We need to create the right skill sets. I will also ensure that every school has a model farm, a large-size model farm, where students engage more in the practicals of agriculture than the theory of agriculture, where every student has a miniature farm or a farm model. So if the schools have what you call farm parks, and every student has a 1 hectare farmland, that student already has the practical experience of a farm. He has the skill set that he can then use when he's employed, when he leaves school, or he decides to become an agripreneur. You will always need to give subsidy in that sector. what do you do as government? Because it's capital intensive, especially in the area, in the capex of equipment and what have you. What will I do? Every local government will have what you call a farm service center. A farm service center gives you the tools, the implements, and everything you need, such as fertilizer and what have you, support the local farmers, so that you can then hire the equipment, or they give them the equipment, farming season, what they need, what they require. They use to support the different farmers, right? In Nigeria today, it's a shame that you speak of agriculture and we don't manufacture any tractors in Nigeria of any of those implements. You fly above Nigeria today, you see swaths of virgin farmland.
I'm so sorry, Mr.
Kachuku.
I've got to butt in. Otherwise, I'm very sorry. Otherwise, I'm in danger of losing this caller as well. Temitokwe has called in from Akowojo. Good morning, Temitokwe in Akowojo in Lagos.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you for calling in.
How are you doing today, sir? Thank you, Thank you for bringing Mr. Kachuku.
Okay. Please go ahead now.
Yes, sir. There are some low-hanging fruit in fixing the economy that I want the president to look into. One is efficiency and a productive civil service. When, no matter the idea the president brings on board, the driver of this idea, aside the minister, are the civil servants. If you don't have an efficient and productive civil servant, this will discourage investors. You want the payback, all the effort of the last administration in the ease of doing business will be mad. You want to get a passport across the country, it's tug of war. You need to settle people. You need to go to get an STR for an expatriate is problem. You need to actually rob people's palm. And the second one, sir, in this agriculture, our tertiary institution and all institutions of higher learning must also be productive. We must go back to research and invention.
Which is what Mr. Kachuku has just spoken about.
Exactly, sir. Research. We know our corporate world are supporting entertainment a lot, but we must have a way of giving tax incentive to people who are supporting research in our Ivy League institutions, so that in agriculture, improved seedling, soil science, geophysical survey, like Mr. Kachuku is mentioning, we have the area of comparative advantage. All right. Thank you, Uncle Yori.
Thank you very much for calling in. So, Mr. Kachuku, as you know, he brought up what you had said, what you had spoken about in the end. But, you know, he also spoke about the whole bureaucracy. He spoke about the civil service and all of that. Even though we're talking about agriculture, does it have a place? Does that heading have a place?
Yeah, earlier on I spoke about ease of doing business and what Yemi Osibanjo was trying to achieve as Vice President of Nigeria, and the fact that they didn't go very far in terms of ease of doing business. I expect that this president will go further than they went. He must succeed in that area if you are to keep your middle class, if you are to keep your legacy investors, and if you to bring in fresh FDIs into Nigeria. You must look at ease of doing business. I keep on saying that your ports, your airport, or your seaports are the first point of interaction for most people into Nigeria, be it business or be it tourism or whatever you're trying to do in Nigeria. The corruption at our ports is alarming, the worst in the world. You have custom officers who are some of the richest people in the world. When the former president brought Hamid Ali, people thought that we were going to breathe a sigh of relief and that he will fix the rot in that sector. Unfortunately, he didn't succeed. It seemed to have gotten worse. I'm happy they brought in a CG who seems, in his body language and all he has said so far, seems to understand what needs to be done there. He should look inwards first of all. He should clear the rot in that system. Nigerians are paying a huge price to support the corruption in that sector. A lot of our young people are trying to do business, bringing products to sell in Nigeria. Imagine you are bringing a product worth $5,000 and you have to pay an equivalent of that amount to bribe people for your goods to come out of the ports. It's the biggest and the most open scam in Nigeria. We all know we don't want to tackle this, but it must be tackled. If we look at CAC and what you have there in terms of registering a company and what have you, we must make it better. Look at our tax system, FIRS, and what have you. Make it better. Ease of business must be tackled frontally.
I got a button again because maybe because you're on, so many people are calling in wanting your perspective on this or that. So you probably will be understanding. Mazi Okorafo has called in from Arochukwu. Good morning, Mazi.
Good morning, Sayori. You see, Sayori, the tax relief the president gave is a welcome development. I think there is need for the president to extend this tax relief to our equipment in terms of agricultural products. This agricultural equipment will help the farmers do what? Move into digital economy and to help our agriculture to produce more. Because what we need in this country is this. I think the security aspect that we are taking out is which is a very simple. And the CBN have a role to play because the exchange rate we are facing in CBN is another big problem. Because if the CBN will maintain a standard, that is 400 or 450 per dollar, it will help us. Look, today is Zimbabwe. They are now using dollars instead of Zimbabwe money, which is not healthy for the economy in that country. People are complaining. Go to Slovakia in Zimbabwe, see that what they are using is American dollar. And people are complaining. Leaving the country, that's what's happening in Nigeria. Many people prefer using dollars to transact instead of Nigerian currency. But the answer is very, very important.
All right, then. I beg your pardon, Mazi. Mazi, I'm so sorry. I'll make it up for you another day, hopefully. Thank you very much. I couldn't really take more than that. And Mr. Kachuku, there's something I wanted to ask you about, because we've talked about security, but it's tucked into other areas. I wanted to bring, to get your opinion, or no, not so much your opinion, your impression on a viral video seen where in the Southeast, so a bunch of guys trying to enforce stay at home, actually on camera, shot at, citizens. We were talking about security earlier. Just your brief thoughts on that and how to get the hold of that particular problem.
Okay, well, I'm well aware of that video. I also understand that National Security Advisor and his team are working diligently, very hard on fixing the issues in the southeast of Nigeria. The president has not spoken much about the southeast, and a lot of people who are speaking to him about Nnamdi Kanu and how losing Nnamdi Kanu will solve the problems of the southeast. He hasn't said much, but I do know, and everything I've heard is that they are working on comprehensive solutions on how to fix the problems there. I'm not part of their cabinet or their team, so I don't know what they are doing, but I understand that they are working on it. But here's my 2 cents on that. Several courts issued orders concerning Nnamdi Kanu. The previous government did not obey those orders. It's a starting point. Those orders must be obeyed. If you want to appeal, there's absolutely nothing wrong in you appealing, and whilst Nnamdi Kanu is free on bail like the courts had ruled. Number one. Number two, I don't believe in a political solution to Nnamdi Kanu's situation. I believe that the courts must adjudicate diligently on that, because the so-called or the victims or people who came to be victims of Nnamdi Kanu, the people who have been killed in the southeast, are potential Nnamdi Kanus tomorrow if you don't let a court of competent jurisdiction adjudicate on that matter. If you utilize a political solution, those people will become enemies of the state, because they will say you betrayed them, their feelings, and their families on that issue. So that's what I feel should happen. I believe that the state must no longer seem to suggest or give the indication that Nigeria is a lawless society. I don't know what security agencies are doing when people drive into a market square and start shooting, and in 2-3 minutes you don't have a police patrol vehicle. They're considering how much state government collects for security votes and what have you. It sends the wrong signals to people or of a country who is trying to look for investors or who wants their middle class to stay. But again, like I said, I am aware, I have heard that National Security Advisor and his team and service chiefs are working on a broad-based solution that will stem the tide and solve that problem once and for all. So let's wait and see. In the next 2-3 months, if the problem has not been solved, definitely I'll be speaking critically on that issue. But right now, let me just hold my bullets on that situation.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Mr. Kachuku. As soon as you came on, the phones just started going haywire. So many people wanting to hear your comments on different aspects, but we've done as much as we could, and at the same time, allow you to speak in such a way as to get, a proper perspective of what it's all about. Well, thank you very much once again. We always enjoy it when you come on the program, and we appreciate you. Okay, now. So that's our program today. Please. All right, then. So please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Iyori Folare. Bye-bye for now.